Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we talk about what's really going on in Russia and the BRICS. Now, my name is Rod of Mackenzie, and today I want to talk about China and why it's buying large numbers of Airbus aircraft. And that's because despite its success in building high-speed rail trains, electric vehicles and trucks, etc., it's never been able to master building a civil aviation industry. And that's not for want of trying. So China's decided to seriously update its civil aviation fleet, and it's considering ordering hundreds of Airbus civilian aircraft of the various models. Now, this does actually indicate a certain strengthening of the economic ties between China and the European Union against the backdrop of the ongoing acute conflict with the United States. Now, at the same time, China's attempt to disrupt the duopoly of Boeing and Airbus in the civil aviation market are still proceeding, and they are seeing some success. Now, I'm also going to look at why China, which has achieved success in so many industries, has not yet been able to compete in commercial aviation the sector, unlike Russia, which now it can. Now, before I continue, I'd like to make an appeal. If you like and enjoy my videos, you can help me fund my channel and my website, SCOBRICSInsight.com, and you can do this by making a small donation, which is done by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen. Every donation does get a personal thank you from me, and also set the alerts so you get notified when I post a new video, and also keep the comments coming, as I love to read and respond to them. Now, the agreements on the sale of the aircraft ranging between from 200 to 500. Now, the list includes both narrow-body and wide-body models, have not been finally reached, but the likelihood of concluding the contract in the near future is quite high. Now, Airbus in general obviously feels more and more confident in the Chinese market, which among other things was facilitated by its construction of an assembly line for the Airbus A320 in Tianjin. So Airbus is actually building planes in China, but I think they're making all the parts elsewhere. Plus, it appears that Airbus's main competitor, the American Boeing, is now experiencing a number of problems in China. Back in April, the regulators ordered Chinese airliners to stop buying Boeings, and it was not about only new orders, but also airliners that were ordered and expected to be delivered. The primary cause of the cooling was the ongoing trade tensions between Beijing and Washington over tariffs. Now, in this context, the deal will send an obviously signal to Donald Trump. Now, at the same time, Boeing's shortcomings are due to its own issues, primarily with regard to the safety of its airliners, such as the Boeing 737 MAX. Now, that's going to take a fair bit of time for it to overcome the numerous scandals that have plagued it over the last few years. So Europe is currently taking the lead in the competition for a share of the Chinese aviation market, which is actually one of the world's largest. In 2021, Chinese airliners carried 440 million passengers, making it the second largest market after the United States, with Russia in third place. Now, the competition between the two largest aircraft manufacturing companies continues to be fierce. However, if we look at the background of China and its history in aviation, it appears that the civil aviation industry is one of the few sectors in China which is not a world-class factory yet. It cannot provide aircraft for its own domestic market. Now, if you look at this logically, it does appear quite strange because it's in stark contrast to things like semiconductor manufacturing, for example. Over the last 5 years, China has become among the leaders in this industry, along with other East Asian powers. That's despite the tough policy of sanctions from the United States on chips, etc. Now, a similar situation is observed in the construction of vehicles and infrastructure. China now produces more than half of the world's merchant fleet tonnage, along with South Korea and Japan. They account for almost 90% of the total of merchant fleet tonnage. Now, in the span of just a few decades, the country has emerged as the dominant player in an industry where there's been an absence of a leading entity for an extended period of time. Now, significant advancements have also been made in the automotive industry. I mean, China now produces more than a third of the world's cars, and that figure's even higher in the electric vehicle sector. I mean, BYD has become the best-selling brand in the world among electric cars, overtaking competitors like Tesla in sales abroad. Now, in the field of railway transport, China's dominance is even more pronounced. I mean, for the last 25 years, China has been investing in its infrastructure, developing a network of high-speed railways that now spans 48,000 kilometres, making it the world leader in high-speed rail. Now, it's estimated that 96% of Chinese cities with a population of over 500,000 have access to these transport links. At the same time, China was able to substitute imports for the production of these railways, although back in the 2000s, almost the entire market belonged to either European or South Korean manufacturers, so it's achieved something pretty spectacular. I mean, you've got to understand, Chinese high-speed trains are the fastest in the world now, with an average speed of around 300 kilometres an hour on their high-speed lines. I mean, currently a train with a maximum speed of 450 kilometres with a cruising speed of 400 kilometres now is undergoing testing. However, in the aviation industry, the results against that background are much more modest, although they've made significant efforts on that front over a long period of time. In 1980, the Shanghai Y-10, a copy of the Boeing 707, took off for the first time. However, over the next decade, only 3 of these airliners were ever built, after which the program was curtailed. Attempts to replicate regional aircraft were moderately successful, with the Soviet AN-24 and the de Havilland Canada D-86 Twin Otter being notable examples. Now, with regard to the segment of medium haul aircraft, there's a noteworthy remembering that, but nothing much. Now, the next approach to the projectile occurred in the 2010s when the ARJ-21, another small regional jet, was being developed. Its sales were also modest, with only 100 planes being produced. I mean, the operating experience of the Chinese aviation sector is pretty not that impressive. Medium-haul narrow-body C919, which is an equivalent to the Boeing 737 or the A320, made its first flight in 2017 and its sales began in 2023. But in the light of the ongoing trade war, its prospects are pretty uncertain. Now, the wide-body airline, the C929, which had been seen as a key project, has still not been entered service. It was initially a joint Russian project, but sanctions imposed in 2022 on Russia led to the termination of the Chinese-Russian cooperation. So according to industry analysts, the prototype will be ready no earlier than 2029-2030. I mean, in general, according to the most optimistic scenarios, we can see that the Chinese aviation is unlikely to become a serious player unless it's in the future in the late 2030s. I mean, the aviation industry is well established, but it's a very challenging industry. I mean, what is the latest issues that's led to this situation? I mean, aircraft manufacture is technologically very complex, and that requires exceptionally highly developed competencies. And that's only part of the situation, since aviation has its own specific criteria. I mean, the manufacturing of an aircraft necessitates a high level of complexity and absolute reliability, which makes achieving the ultimate goal a particularly challenging endeavour. I mean, the production of aircraft components is challenging, particularly in the case of the aircraft engine. I mean, modern engines, for example, require blades made of single crystals, titanium and aluminium alloys that can withstand temperatures of 1,600 degrees for thousands of hours. Now, while these crystals can be cultivated in China, they're not intended for the mass market. Plus, it's imperative that the design, production and assembly are executed with absolute pinpoint precision. I mean, even the most successful designs require many years of testing in order to verify their reliability. And as in the case in many traditional industries, such competencies have been developed historically over long periods of time. I mean, looking back, in the 1940s, the first reliable jet engines were manufactured in Great Britain by Rolls-Royce, who still make very good jet engines. I mean, the Germans were actually pioneers in the field of jet aviation, but their engines were not as durable or stable. Now, the British government decided to share its technological secrets with the American allies. Big mistake there, wasn't it? Then the USSR acquired multiple Rolls-Royce engines, prompting Soviet aircraft designers to undertake comprehensive reverse engineering initiatives. And that contributed significantly to the accelerated development of Soviet aviation, which I've covered extensively in previous videos. Now, the aviation industry has historically adopted a trial and error approach to innovation. In the early stages, toleration for failure was much higher, and it was possible for aircraft designers and industry leaders to gradually develop, including the events of a negative experience. Now, as time has passed, safety has been elevated to its absolute level as the maximum importance, and only countries with decades of production experience and accumulated competencies can compete in the global aviation market. So the formation of the American-European duopoly was actually driven by the significant challenges faced by the domestic aviation industry in Russia following the dissolution of the USSR. So in this regard, it's intriguing to compare the situation with high-speed trains, which are also a significantly more recent development than aviation. But it should be noted that initially their market was very small and still much smaller than the aviation one. Secondly, China has invested significantly in developing the industry. In China, high-speed railways are set to become the dominant mode of transportation, potentially displacing air travel because of their speed. I mean, they can go city to city faster than most planes because of the distance to airports, etc. I mean, in this instance, the railway prevailed over aviation, although the latter remained a significant presence, but in a niche capacity. I mean, this niche includes flights from various parts of the country as Beijing to Guangzhou and Beijing to Urumqi, among others. I mean, following the introduction of high-speed rail, there's been a decline in passenger traffic in civil aviation, as you would expect. Consequently, civil aircraft industry in China is being regarded as a significant and prestigious sector, but it's not a core priority for the Chinese Communist Party, meriting substantial resources and commitment. So, at present, China remains an attractive market for foreign aircraft manufacturers, well, except Boeing, and the agreement to purchase Airbus will be one of the most significant redistributions of the aviation market sales in recent history. Now, for Boeing, this is another significant setback, one that they're not really going to recover from. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and also share with others who might enjoy the video. And if you want to help me out, make a donation by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen. Thank you, and I'll see you soon. Bye.